Things working the way it should be. Thanks so much for being here today. This is your chance to ask questions and get some answers about the Violympics, and I'm sure we'll get to some other violin-related topics as well, maybe even viola-related topics. So just to let you know, welcome to those of you on Facebook and on YouTube. I can only look at one conversation at once, so I'll see your questions, or as many of them as I can anyway, on the Nate's Violin Facebook page. So for those of you who have maybe watched some of the Violympic stuff inside the Violympic Trials Facebook group, that's not where this live video is happening, in case you wanted to pass this along to any friends. It's on the Nate's Violin Facebook page, my page. And so, yeah, just for those of you on YouTube, I welcome you. If you want to ask questions, it'll have to be on the Nate's Violin Facebook page, or just enjoy the conversation. So great to see some friendly faces already. Let me know who you are and where you're coming from, in case I didn't know that already. And strangely, for LA, I had to put an umbrella over my head to get from from my house to the little studio here. Otherwise, I would have looked even more frightful than I might otherwise. And yeah, this is, as a reminder, the Violympics, as I'm sure you know, are starting up on June 1st, and we're coming up on the last couple days to register. So for those of you who still kind of deciding if the Violympics is right for you, or have any particular questions about how it all works, now's the time to ask them, and I'll be keeping an eye on that conversation. I'm going to paste the link here in the comments, just so that you know where to go to get more details that you aren't getting from me live here. I see a great question already from Alwyn. What pieces should I be preparing for the start of this summer's program? And the nice thing is I'm going to provide all that. I mean, of course, I always feel better if I'm starting a project, if I'm kind of warmed up and in good shape and all that, but don't forget that the point of the Olympics is to get you into shape as well. So, you could do nothing and you would still be fine starting off our first event in the Violympics. Just like the trials, we're going to start nice and easy and get some things in place, hand frame, tone production, ways to listen carefully for pitch, and I'll give you the daily assignments and all the music. So there's no need for you to prepare anything. So I would just say to play what you like between now and then. Do the kinds of practicing that you're used to already, or if the trials was something new for you, if those kinds of assignments spoke to you, you could do more of that. I know a lot of you in the trials Facebook group actually repeated the entire 5-day challenge a week later and got a lot out of that, and I enjoyed seeing your posts and videos about that. So that's another thing you might do. And Christopher, you ask if the Violympics program has a cost. It does, and you can see the details on that in the link that I gave. But the 12-week Violympic Games is $797. There's also an option to make two payments instead, two payments of $425. And so that's the cost for the Violympic Games, to participate all summer. And then, when you ask opportunity to send me videos for feedback. I'm not set up to do that for the Violympic Games because we have such a strong group and I would very quickly get overwhelmed. The opportunities for feedback are mainly going to come from you guys, from the community. We're going to have that Violympic Village Facebook group, and while it's not required, to have Facebook or to join Facebook or to be on Facebook for the Violympic Games, that's going to be the source of community. You can share questions and videos there, and I am going to be in the Violympic Village several times a week. checking on things, answering questions as I can. When I see a video that speaks to me, you know, I'll comment on it. If there's a question I can answer, I will. But that I don't want to promise, because I just wouldn't be able to deliver on it for each and every one of you. So I will appear also live, just as I'm doing now. I'm going to appear live once during every 2-week event to answer questions, do some demonstrations. That it's going to look like this because it'll be a live stream, but instead of being on Facebook, it's going to be within the course on natesviolin.com. The course and all the materials I deliver to you via your own login on natesviolin.com, and that's where I will appear live once every 2-week event to do something like this and work through that event's material. And Debbie, you have the question about will all pieces be rewritten for viola, or will you have that task? And the whole question of viola participation, if you did the trials, you know how the assignments and the exercises that I gave you were written about and spoken about for the violin, just so that I didn't have to say, okay, I want you to do this on the A and E strings. For violas, I want you to do it on the D and A strings. I didn't want to repeat everything like that. However, the challenge piece, the Violympic theme, I gave you separate parts, one for violin, one for viola, and I had it, you know, checked over by a good violist friend of mine to see if anything looked strange in the viola part. That will be the same in the Violympic games. The daily assignments and the excerpts, little sections of music that I pull from more known pieces, I'm not going to rewrite every one of those for viola, and I'm not going to give the assignments in 2 different ways. You know, if, for example, there may be an assignment that involves some reaching, and for that I would say, you know, the distances on viola are a little greater. I suggest on the viola you do this exercise perhaps in 3rd position so that it's not too straining on the hand. But for the daily exercises and assignments, I will not be giving separate materials. However, for each of the 6 challenge pieces that I will give one violin version and one viola version and have that checked over by a viola colleague to make sure that that looks all right. Great. And, you know, likely I'm going to miss some questions that might scroll by, so you may have to, if you have a burning question, you may have to repeat it later down the stream, of course. How many students will there be in the program? That's still being decided. It looks like we're going to have a nice, strong group. I would say at least a couple hundred people participating, so it's going to be a really fun community, Violympic Village. First of all, I just love that name. I wish I'd come up with it, but that was a great suggestion, the Violympic Village. And yeah, I think, you know, the more the merrier, really, because as you probably saw during the trials, there was that great sense of sharing, knowing that you weren't alone going through the assignments and you know, celebrating your wins and also looking for help on the struggles too. Lisa likes hand frames. I do too. And then Matthew, you ask about schedule and timing, especially for those of you with teaching schedules. Will there be set live sessions? That's a great question, and something that is a little bit different from the trials. The short answer is that the Violympic Games are designed to work on your schedule. And this answer is going to be a little bit longer and more detailed, so hang in there, especially if there are some of you who already understand all of what I'm about to say. Designed to work on your schedule. So were the trials, actually, even though I did appear live for 5 days in a row to help you through the material. There were a lot of people that joined the trials late, and they were still able to do it because really what the trials consisted of was a set of materials, right? Your journal, your workbook, the piece, the Violympic theme, and my videos to help walk you through those assignments and preparing the piece. That, along with the great community, which was the Violympic Trials Facebook group. And that's really what the trials were. So none of that had to be live, although so many of you enjoyed being there live, knowing that you were witnessing the work as it happened. You were able to ask some questions in real time and all that. But for the people who joined late, they got pretty much the same experience. They got the materials, got the piece, got the 5 daily videos to walk them through it. And so the Violympic Games is going to be like that. There will not be any live sessions except for what I was just talking about, where once during each 2-week event, I'll host a live Q&A like this with my violin, just for course members to talk about what we're doing during that event, give some tips, answer some questions. Everything else you will get via the course portal in natesviolin.com. So at the start of each week, that means before I go to bed each Sunday night, I will make available that upcoming week's material. So we're going to start on June 1st, for example. That means before I go to bed on May 31st. 30 days, half September, April, June. Yeah, May 31st. You will be able to see when you log in, the course members, you log in on natesviolin.com to the course, you'll see, here's event 1, week 1. It'll be your workbook with that week's assignments and, all of the excerpts of various things that I'm going to pull from to go through the concepts and help you work on them. And then the next week, before I go to bed Sunday night, you'll see event 1, week 2, and that will be the challenge piece, which nobody knows except me. Nobody knows what that first challenge piece is going to be. You'll see it there, violin version, viola version, and you'll have a new week's workbook with my suggested ways to help you get through the piece. I neglected to mention the videos, I'm sorry. Event 1, week 1 will have, it could be one long video taking you through all that week's assignments. It could be shorter videos. It just depends on how I feel it's best to break it up for that event. Same for week 2. You'll have my video playing the challenge piece. And then, in addition, helping you through my suggested assignments to help you prepare the challenge piece. And so that's how it'll work. You could do the daily assignments every day on schedule, record those challenge pieces on time, score the points if the point scoring and the video making are great motivators for you. I think those are going to be fun motivational tools for a lot of you. Or you could say, I'm kind of busy these 2 weeks. I'm going to do this event later. Or I'm just going to skip this event. I'll come back to it later. I've even had a few people tell me, look, I'm really busy this summer. I've got this, that, and the other going on. And I'm going to purchase the Violympics because, that registration is closing May 20. And I'm going to do it in the fall. And that is going to work just great because when the fall starts, they can log into natesviolin.com, start the Violympics right then. They're not going to score points and compete for prizes, but that's because that is not important to them. They're going to go through the material after the summer. So I know that's a long answer, but that should let you know how it would work around your schedule. Great, and then good follow-up from you also, Matthew. Would I recommend committing to one for the entire program? That's a good question. I've done some doubling. I have performed professionally as a violist, but on the times that I did, I also played violin on the same program, and I thought, oof, this is kind of tough. I mean, I can do it, but it's a little tough to switch. I think that just depends on what your experience has been switching. If you find that it takes you a while to kind of get back in the head space, the hand space for one instrument, then I might suggest, sticking with one for one event. That's an option too. You could say for this event, I'm going to do this one on violin, learn the challenge piece on violin. Next event, I feel like switching to viola. Or frankly, you could go through the whole Violympics on one and then, devote the next 3 months to going through it again on the other instrument. You could do one on schedule with everyone and do the other instrument later. So I'm not sure I could recommend one approach or the other for you. And then Julia, you ask, am I composing music for this program? Because I did compose the Violympic theme, if you call that composing. I'm flirting still with the idea of reserving that last challenge piece for myself and composing it. It would be fun, but I also want to make sure it's really good. I was happy with how the Violympic theme came out, and I think it was a nice way to introduce a lot of techniques. So I'm withholding judgment on that. If I compose any of it, it would be the last one, the grand finale challenge. The other challenge pieces are being selected by celebrity guests. You may have seen already that Gil Shaham is picking one challenge for you. He's picked it. It's definitely something nobody will have seen before, and I'm hoping. I don't know if he'll do this or not. He was thinking about learning the challenge piece that he picked along with us, and maybe giving us a glimpse into that process. But he's not committing to that. So, but he has picked the challenge, and Simon Fisher, who many of you will. Look, I've got a bunch of his books always close at hand. Here's Simon Fisher's Warming Up, which I love. Tone is never far away either. Another gem of a book. He's picked a challenge piece for us. He's thrown down the challenge. And so it's going to be a fun mix. And, the personalities, I think, of each of the people picking the challenge piece are going to come through. And that's going to add a really fun element for it. And now, Angela, you ask, accessing the materials after the 12-week program is finished. Yes. Lifetime access to this. So, as I said, a lot of people have already told me they're not even going to start until after the summer. Now, you still have to commit now, just so that I know how to finish up preparations for all those folks, because maybe you change your mind. You want to decide you do want to start in the summer, or so I need to know by May 20th. But as far as accessing the materials, you can do that anytime, after the program. And yes, so that means you can work at your own pace. And I've already advised a lot of people like that. People have emailed me and said, can I take more time? Some people who did the trials and said it was exciting learning that piece in 5 days. I did feel a little bit rushed, and that's okay. It was a challenge, a challenge for anybody who decided to take on the piece and to learn it in 5 days. But it was also a challenge for me to lay things out in a way that would be fun and motivating. And for some people, the pace of it was a little too fast. And, I encouraged them to go through it again and take their time, spend 2 days on each day's worth of assignments. You can do the same thing in the Violympic Games, to score points. If those medals, those bragging rights are important to you, then you've got to do it on schedule, which means filling out practice journals, recording the challenge piece by the end of the day, Sunday, at the end of each event. But for many, if not most of you, those points are just, they're a fun little sprinkling on the cake, maybe, but not the main reason that you're going to be doing this. So, your own pace. You can take 4 weeks for each event, however you want to do it. That's really up to you. And then, I hope I pronounce your name right, Stefan. The pieces that I will give, do they come from the general repertoire? Will the pieces I give you have much use outside the games? So that's a great question. My thought, so I'll let you in on at least this much, because I'm not telling you exactly what you'll be playing, but the general thought is that since each event has 2 weeks, the second week's the challenge piece, the first week introduces or refines the concepts that we're going to be working on in that event. And I'm actually just going to pull that up for you guys to go over that plan a little bit. So there are 2 phases, 2 weeks to each event. In that first week, when I say, here's what we're going to be looking at, and so now I've pulled it up so that we can get to some specifics. Event 1, opening ceremonies, and I call them a classic trio: physical setup, tone production, and intonation. So that's going to be the focus. Now, of course, what piece do you play where you don't have to focus on tone production and intonation? But the first event is a great way to really hone those without having to worry about fingered octaves and spiccato and everything else. Not saying that the challenge piece won't include any other techniques, but that setup, tension-free setup, producing a beautiful sound in all registers and all dynamics, and playing in tune. Those can be the focus of that first event. So in that first week of the first event, I'm going to be taking excerpts, selections from pieces that you probably will know. Pieces and etudes. So think concertos, familiar concertos, think showpieces, think classic etudes, Kreutzer, Sevcek, Schreidek, don't, and it doesn't stop there, So you can think of things like that. I'll be drawing little examples from those to say, okay, here's where the concepts apply in pieces that you probably already know. Here are some assignments having to do with that. And then the second week, the challenge pieces, as I say, I'm picking those or asking, my friends to pick those, hoping that you will not have seen those, that they will not be familiar. And, you may or may not play those pieces outside the games. I'm hoping that you'll discover some of them and say, this is great. I never heard of this before. It's been around for a while. I'd never heard of it, and neither had anybody else, but now I'm going to program it next time. Or you might just say, this was a really fun challenge, and it showed me how to apply, having a great setup, beautiful sound in all our registers, playing in tune. It showed me how to apply that in a very short window of time, very quickly, but I don't want to play it again. And that's fine too. So definitely the material that we will go through in the first week of each event, you're going to play that stuff again. The challenge pieces, you may or may not. Their function is to show you how to apply those concepts quickly and efficiently to a brand new piece. Let's see some questions about schedule, and that's a big topic. So let me start with that. Schedule and how many hours of study per day is required. So once again, just imagine it's the night before June 1st. You wake up on June 1st. You log into the course portal on natesviolin.com, and you see Event 1, Week 1. And so that is your plan for that entire first week. You have already the excerpts of the different pieces, my notes on them, your daily assignments, practice assignments for that week. I'm aiming for those practice assignments to be similar to the ones we did in the Violympic trials, aiming for those to take maybe 30 minutes a day. And some of that practice might replace practicing that you're already doing. Like in certain events, we're going to be focusing on scales and scale routine. So if you already have a scale routine, you're already practicing scales every day, the assignments in that event are not going to add 30 minutes of practice to your practice time, right? Some of that might replace scale work that you're already doing. So that's about how much time I'm thinking specifically for my assignments. And so you can choose, as I said, to follow my suggested plan, and you're going to do your half an hour's worth of assignments every day during that first week. And then wake up the next Monday morning, there is your challenge piece. You've got the whole piece. Again, you've got my daily suggested assignments for how to work your way through it, and my video on that as well. And that is the schedule for each of the 6 events. During each event, as I say, I will also appear once live just for you course members to take questions and give some tips on how to work through that event's material. But that's really how it's going to work. So you don't have to show up at any certain time. And I hope that's a good answer for how the schedule will work. And then Robert, you ask if we'll be examining in further detail the technical concepts we introduced during the Violympic trials and Bach on the Road. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Violympic trials, Lisa already mentioned hand frame. That was an important concept that we spent a little time on. The full Violympics are going to give us a lot more time to go into that, and you'll see it work not just over 5 days, but over 12 weeks, you know. So, I mean, certainly every one of the concepts that we touched on in the trials will get a fuller treatment in the Violympic Games. And yeah, if you watched any or all, I don't know if there's anybody out there who could have taken in all of Bach on the Road, but if you watched any of it, you also heard me hit on certain themes again and again. A lot to do with chords, as there are so many there. Memorization. I mean, there were a wealth of topics we got into in Bach on the Road too. Those are going to get fuller treatments as well. And then just briefly, since I told you the first event, and these details, by the way, they're on that page that I linked to before. So I'm just going to paste that again so that it's again here in the Facebook comments. But it's about halfway down that very long page. Gives you an overview of what we're going to cover. That first event, physical setup, tone production, and intonation. Event 2, we're going to focus on hand frame and key bow strokes. Now, of course, hand frame implies things like physical setup, right, and intonation. So it's impossible to talk about, you know, one technique on a violin without it relating to other techniques, of course. So it's not that we will only do strict hand frame exercises and strict bow stroke exercises, but it's just that that's where the focus will lie. That's what I'll be turning to again and again during that event, event 2. Event 3, you know, now that we've talked about hand frame, we're going to talk about shifting. So hand frame is really about playing comfortably and in tune and easily within a position. Shifting is about changing positions. So if you can do those two things, there really isn't anything on the violin that you can't get around. Shifting and rhythm. So you can figure that the challenge piece for event 3 will include some tricky rhythms, maybe some tricky meters and all of that. Event 4, I call virtuoso building blocks, scales, arpeggios, and vibrato. So once we've gone into hand frame and shifting, then we can talk about scales. See, a lot of people, I feel, they get obsessed with scales when they're unable to play comfortably in a position, unable to shift reliably. And then scales, of course scales are frustrating, or they're messy, or you don't know how to get around them. That makes complete sense if you haven't got a good grounding in hand frame and shifting. So event 4, we can get into scales, arpeggios, and then of course vibrato. That's often called the fingerprint or the thumbprint of the sound. Event 5, extending your range, double stops and trills, and both of those are things that I think people often think of as sort of bonuses. Well, I don't play double stops. I think you should, because they help your hand so much, even just for playing single notes, and it opens up so much wonderful music that you can play, such as Bach. I would just hate for you not to be able to play solo Bach because you're afraid of double stops. There's no need for that. And trills, as you know, if you took in my YouTube series on trills, pardon me, trills help the hand, lightness, facility, accuracy as well. And then finally, event 6, bringing it all together. You can bet that challenge piece will include everything we've talked about, including some advanced practice strategies. Grand finale challenge, plus the closing ceremonies and medals. So that kind of lets you know what to expect. And Miki, I hope that helps answer your question about the overview of the program. If not, you can let me know down below. Follow-up program to the Violympics once they conclude. Anjali, perhaps something with personalized feedback. Right, and Anjali, you mentioned my Virtuoso Master course, that's going on right now with a small group of dedicated players, violinists and violists. The Virtuoso Master course, I have done 2 Virtuoso Masters. This is the second one now. So far it's been a 6-month, highly personalized program with, yes, that individual feedback. That's a mix of small group work and individual work. I mean, we meet at least twice a week live, and plus individual sessions. And yeah, I mean that's the Virtuoso Master course is the place for that. Of course, something like that has to be a lot smaller so that I can make promises that I can keep about giving everyone individual feedback. That this current Virtuoso Master course is ending mid-July. And so the next one I'm aiming to start, yes, at the end of summer, perhaps the very beginning of fall. So certainly if any of you would be interested in something like that, a much more highly individual program with that feedback, let's stay in touch on that. And you'll see emails from me closer to that time as well. And great, yeah. Ernst Jan likes the idea of Gil, Shaham, and others challenging us. Me too, because I'm going to have to take those challenges too. So whatever pieces they pick, I set myself up for those too. And now, BBB, if your question, you ask excerpts or a whole movement, if you're referring to what we'll be studying during the first week of each event, it would never be something as large as a whole movement of a concerto or anything like that. I want to use those first weeks to prep us, to get us speaking the same language about techniques, how to set them up, how to practice them. And you don't need 10 minutes of music to do that. You might need a line or two or half a page. It just depends on what it is. And that's my job to set up for you. And then the challenge pieces, I want them to be something, again, a reach, but something that's doable in that second week. So if you did the Violympic trials, that piece was 2 pages, lasted about 2 minutes. That's what I'm aiming for with these challenge pieces. And something we haven't touched on yet today, but you saw if you were part of the Violympic trials, modifications. While I can't give each and every one of you a completely personalized program, if you did the trials, you saw how I made suggestions on how you could modify the Violympic theme so that it would work for a whole lot of different levels. If you're not doing double stops yet, then maybe focus on other aspects. If you don't play octaves, do this instead. If you want to do this assignment slower, all those things. I'll be making similar suggestions for both the week 1 and the challenge pieces. So that's how those of us at different levels can work together. Apologies for the beeping here. And available to watch later. Hi, Charlotte. Well, Charlotte's part of the Virtuoso Master course, and we'll have a nice contingent of virtuosi in the Violympics as well. And yes, if you're speaking about this Q&A, this will also be available to watch later. And Charlotte's in a time zone that probably means this is not the best time to be watching. But yes, this video will be available on the Nate's Violin Facebook page to watch later. And if by chance you're referring to the Violympics themselves, yes, you'll keep access to that forever. Login information for those of you who may already have signed up. will be, I haven't promised you a specific date on that because I don't want to miss it, but it will be before June 1st. They're just the only material that you could really make use of before June 1st anyway is my tech setup guide. So I'll get that and login information to you before we start on June 1st. And then Lisa, any suggestions? Yes, I think that's what I had just touched on. Modifications for those closer to beginning players on what to practice specifically. A list of etudes for those who may not have them. Those pieces, when I say familiar pieces, I mean pieces that anybody could get, on IMSLP legally, meaning that they're in the public domain. So a list of pieces and etudes. I will include the excerpts that you need, but yes, if you wanted to go ahead and get, if you know that you have your own copy of Kreutzer, we're going to have a good deal of Kreutzer in there. Sevcek, the Opus 8 shifting book, Schreidek, don't. I mean, those are all included for sure. It's not limited to those, but if you don't have parts, if you don't want to prepare any parts in advance, I'm including all of that for you because it's all public domain. So a video of each challenge piece, Peter, yes. Nathan Cole, will personally learn each challenge piece. And yeah, I'll be making a video for you guys, performing that, and then also a separate video walking you through how I would prepare the piece, how I did prepare the piece. So great questions. And then now open for questions after the summer. That would be in the Violympic group, the Violympic Village, where I'll be checking in and answering questions again. I just can't promise that individual, feedback on videos, for example, because there would just be no way I could live up to that for everybody. But I think if you've emailed me already about the Violympics, you see, I'll answer your question. And I'll be in the Violympic Village Facebook group as well. Yes, even after the 12 weeks, it probably wouldn't be several times a week after the 12 weeks of the official games, but I'll be in there and help make your experience as smooth as it can be. And Julia, you ask about scoring and social platforms. That is something that, and I will be honest, I don't have the final answer on specifically that aspect of the scoring system with the social platforms, because what I saw is that caused a lot of stress for a lot of you, and I think violin can sometimes be stressful enough. So when I looked back and read the scoring rules for the trials, I could see that there was some confusion there, some ambiguity. So I'm going to spell out very specifically how that's going to work, and to make it something that is actually enjoyable for everybody, because I don't want you to spend your time, lighting up 10 different social platforms to score points. The point of the points is that they should be things that will enhance your progress in the summer. Things like filling out your practice journal, learning and recording the challenge pieces, things like that. And yes, sharing, but that will be in a very specific and, how do I want to call that, a contained way that is not going to add a lot of time or stress to your experience. So that's a great question, and then something that I wasn't entirely happy with about the trials, specifically the social part of it. Was fun though. I loved seeing the posts. And they were really inspiring, and I hope those of you who were part of the trials were also inspired by some of the shares that you saw. Well, I'm sorry for a couple of you have bad connections, and unless I'm getting that comment from everybody, I'm going to hope that it's just your browser, and maybe you can refresh. For these Facebook Live things, sometimes refreshing the window is what's needed. And Denise asking if the Violympics are a good precursor to the Virtuoso Master course. And yes, I really do believe, those folks in my Virtuoso Master course, they're going to be participating in the Violympics as well, many of them, kind of as a supplement to what we're doing. And I've told them, look, these concepts are not going to be new to you guys because we've been working in great detail on these things before, but this is going to be a chance to put it to the test with some fresh material, compressed time frame, motivation of a larger community. So they're going to have a great time in the Violympics too, and I hope they'll be strong members of the Violympic Village community too, and lend their support. But yes, I think it'll work very well the other way too, where these Violympic Games would be a great introduction, well, quite a full introduction to the way I like to work. And then, right, if you do the games and you feel like, wow, this has been the best summer of my playing life, what I need now is to take that a step further with that regular individual feedback from Nathan. Then yeah, that's what you'd want to be looking at. Now Debbie, you ask about the lowest level of player I would recommend. That's rather a down way of putting it. So you mentioned something like Suzuki Book 6. Someone working in Suzuki Book 6, I would say that, yeah, if you wanted to take every one of the 6 challenge pieces exactly as written, you'd have a tough time of it. But, that's not the way I would do it. I would take my suggestions for modifications and thereby work on the concepts, because Suzuki Book 6, there's not a technique I named in my outline of the program that doesn't come up by Suzuki Book 6. Double stops, trills, the key bow strokes, scales and arpeggios. A Book 6 person, a child especially, might not have a scale routine. I get that, but certainly scales and arpeggios appear in the music. So all of those concepts would directly apply to the music that you're working on. The challenge pieces might take it a step too far if you tried to do it without modifications. So, that's where my suggestions, I think, would come in handy for that. As far as scale book, the Flesch scale book is the most famous one, the most talked about. It's also pretty confusing. And, what we're going to see in the event on scales is that I don't follow any particular book by the book. I don't open the Flesch scale book and just go down, the whole 3 pages or whatever. I just think it's way too much and not all of it helpful. That was written close to 100 years ago, so I think teaching and learning, understanding has changed in those 100 years. And so the Flesch book is a great resource to have. I do recommend having it. Simon Fisher has a scales book that has helped an enormous number of people. I really like Simon Fisher's approach. I like his scale book, but I don't think you need a book to play scales. And if you're curious about how I do them, then that event is where you'll hear about it. Awesome. Alwyn, I'm going to reply to your comment here, and hopefully everybody can see it. It's that link, because you asked where you could read about that rundown, and it's on the page that I have. I'll put it here in the comments too. That's on that link that I've been posting. Great. Tova, here's a question not specifically about the Violympics, so that'll give us a nice break. Pinky, I need pinky power in a serious way. How to proceed in the Violympics with a flat pinky? Well, and maybe you're referring to my YouTube video that is called Pinky Power, and that's the way that I had to rebuild my pinky when I was horrified to find in my mid-20s that my pinky had flattened out. I always thought I had a great pinky, and then I was playing one day and I thought, how could this be? It's totally collapsing on me. So I used some exercises to get it back in shape. But don't let that be, first of all, you're going to go on YouTube, you see any number of great players with a flat pinky. It's not the biggest deal in the world. So, if they can play this virtuoso repertoire with a flat pinky, you can handle the Violympics with a flat pinky. I do advise giving some attention to it. That's something we're going to start talking about right in the very first event with physical setup and continuing with hand frame. But that problem doesn't have to be solved for you to do meaningful work on other things. People in my Virtuoso Master course are working on pinky shape and pinky response, and that's something we just do alongside other things. So watch that YouTube video on Pinky Power, and you can start making changes on that right away. Hi Kathy, good to see you too. You say it would have been great if you did the Violympics before the master course. Well, now you get to do them at the same time. Great. And then, you ask about the length of the, my videos, which are going to support things. And that's going to vary by event, but because, as you know from the Violympic trials, I was on Facebook Live and YouTube Live 5 days in a row. It was about half an hour a day on Facebook Live. The videos to support the Violympic events will probably not go on that long. So in other words, it's not going to be 2.5 hours of video for you to watch every single week. I would find that too much. If I were, participating in the program and wanting to make a lot of progress on the violin, I'd kind of want to have the violin in my hands more and not watch 2.5 hours of video every week. I just think that would be a little bit tiring. I wanted to do it in the trials to make sure that everybody could get a nice introduction to my style, to how possible it might be to learn a piece with guidance in 5 days. So as you remember, they're not going to be live sessions except for once every 2-week event. As I said, I'll do a Q&A for course members, but they're not going to be those daily live sessions. You'll get your material at the beginning of each week, and it will be either, one longer video, not 2.5 hours, probably not even 1 hour, because I want you to be able to get in there and start doing the assignments. Either one longish video or a series of shorter ones taking you through that week's daily assignments. And then the second week of each event, video of me playing the challenge piece, and then another video of me taking you through how I might prepare it. But it will not be as long as the videos for the trials. Good. Good. I'm not seeing new questions at the moment, so if you were holding on to one, and again, I probably should have said this several times since the beginning, but for those of you on YouTube, if you're with me live and you do have a burning question, remember that I can only monitor the conversation over here on Facebook. That is the Nate's Violin Facebook page. So if you're with me live on YouTube and you want to hop over here, to ask your question, let me know. For those of you with me on Facebook, yeah, the queue, I'm at the bottom of the queue. So if you type something in, I will see it right now. That's your chance if you've been holding on to a question, because I'm going to wrap up in these next 10 minutes. But it's great already to hear from so many of you who are going to be part of the games. Since it's disappeared, I will paste that link one more time in the Facebook comments. Yeah, wonderful to hear from so many of you. And I've heard from you via email, which is great. It is me answering the emails, by the way. I always kind of laugh, and it's a perfectly reasonable question, but someone will start out by saying, I don't know if it's you reading this, but I have a question, and yeah, it's me. So I try my best to get your answer to you as quickly as possible, but when that doesn't happen, it is because it's me reading the emails. And yeah, Anjali mentions, I'm sure you can send Nathan an email, and you can. contact@natesviolin.com. Well, Nathan, now this is a great point, and this just speaks to one facet of this not working the way it should. Nathan has signed up and has still gotten an email saying, please sign up for the, and that shouldn't happen. So I won't make an excuse for that. That shouldn't happen. It does not necessarily indicate a problem with your sign up, but I would want to check. So I will check in your case. And if that's true for any of you, you've signed up and you're getting an email that makes it look like you haven't, please bring that to my attention, because I want to check on you personally and make sure that you're in the system. I'm handling, making sure of that. So that's also the reason that, I want to finish all the registrations by the 20th, which is actually just 2 days away, this Wednesday. By the end of the day, I want to know who's in so that I can check every email address, make sure everybody's getting the information they need, and that I've got time to do that before the games start on June 1st. So if you wouldn't mind sending me an email, I see, I'm not great at reading Cyrillic. I hope that says Ina. If you would send me an email as well about that, just to make sure that I can check on you personally. And Samantha, you ask about payment options. If you look on that, look on the page, you'll see there's an option to pay once, which is $797, and there's an option to make 2 payments a month apart, 2 payments of $425. And those are the payment options I have for this, just not to get too complex. You start adding more complexity and even more things start going wrong, but not too much has gone wrong yet, I'm happy to say. This is the best part, actually, is just talking with you guys. Let's see. Great. Alwyn, you mentioned that you have a tendency toward overuse, aches and pains. Any tips for staying in athletic shape? Well, a few, yes. And one is, don't do what I'm doing right now. I'm reading your comments and I'm hunching over, and boy, that's bad. What I like is sitting and looking at the camera here, because I've got my little adjustable stool. I can do this, I can swivel around. And I think especially these days, haven't a lot of us been sitting perhaps a lot more than normal? I mean, it may not be true for all of you, but I've been sitting a lot. And whatever, whether you're sitting, standing, walking, that posture is important. So you can start with your everyday posture, how you do certain things. I've gotten hurt in the past, not for the long term, luckily, but if it's been a lot of computer work one day or 1 week, and then I play the violin, I might feel it. And that lets me know, maybe I don't need to be sitting and typing quite as much as I was. Or let me get started more slowly on the violin today if it's typing that I couldn't avoid. I like to do weights. I'm not... You can look at me and see I'm no bodybuilder, but I do like strength training. I feel like it helps my violin playing, flexibility. I am very careful with form for that. I don't go super heavy with anything. Again, you can look at me and see that. But between posture and some kind of exercise that actually works muscle groups, those are the best things I can recommend for the violin. And then, never staying too long on one kind of work. Never too long on one passage, never too long in one position. Even mentally, the more tired you are mentally, the less brain power you have to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to switch to another task now. I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. You get tired physically, you get tired mentally, you're more likely just to say, okay, I'm going to just do this for 20 minutes, and that's when you get hurt. And sometimes, people have bad luck. You get hurt playing the violin. It wasn't always your fault. Things happen. Maybe this happened to me once. I was moving stuff around in the house. I moved a box. Didn't seem like a big deal. I maybe felt a little bit in my arm. Didn't seem like a big deal. A week later, I got hurt playing the violin. It was in the same place. I know those things were related. And surely what I needed to have done was to take it easier on the violin. So in that sense, it was my fault, but I wasn't necessarily doing anything wrong on the violin. I just tweaked something in real life, and then it showed up in the violin too. So, cut yourself some slack. The techniques that I teach are all geared toward having as little tension as possible, as much ease as possible. So if you start following, my outline for how to set up and how to work, hopefully you will find that you play with less tension. Those are long-term habits that you can build too. David, you asked about a document that certifies the course we did with you. Yeah, that's something I hadn't thought of, but that's a great idea. A laureate of the Violympic Games. And Darlene, maybe I'll make, unless there's a last-minute question, this might be a great one to end on. Darlene, you ask, will part of the course include information about stretching and exercise? Well, I had not thought to formally make that part of the course. I had thought to deal with that, especially in the first event, as far as physical setup. Talking about specifically, on the violin, what to look for, what to watch for, how to relate to the violin and the bow, body proportions, setups for different sizes and shapes. I hadn't thought to make a formal part of it about the stretching. I have to be honest, I stretch a little bit less than I used to. I stretch after exercise and I stretch after playing. I don't stretch before playing. I just start my playing day more slowly than I used to, and that seems to get me warmed up the quickest. I don't love stretching cold muscles, but if that's something that more of you are interested in, then I would be able to put something together to include just some separate instructions for exercise and stretching. And the final challenge, yes, there will be. I mean, the challenge piece for the 6th event, I'm calling the grand finale challenge. That's the medal round, so to speak. And that piece, as I said, I'm flirting with the idea of writing it myself, but that piece surely will bring together all the different techniques that we've done in the games. And then Robert, you ask, and I'll close with this. This is perfect. Great question, Robert. Did I formulate many of my practice routines while playing professionally in major orchestras? I did. The really important period for me was that first job I had after school, after Curtis. I had great teachers growing up, and then I went to conservatory. Great school, great teachers there, did a lot of practicing. And then I had this big fear. I thought, I'm playing well. I've learned a lot here at Curtis. But my big fear was, what if I never get any better? Like, what if this is the peak? And that kind of, I got to my first job in the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. I was principal second violin there, living on my own kind of for the first time. Had this apartment up in a high-rise building, sitting there. All of a sudden I had all this time. I had a job, but for a single man living in an apartment, that was like 4 rehearsals and 4 concerts a week. I didn't have to do anything else if I didn't want to. So I had all this time and this fear that no matter what I did, I could never get any better, and in fact, I would decline. That is the time that I dug out the Etude books again and dug out whatever other books I could find. Galamian's books, Leopold Mozart, Gemignani, and started reading. And I thought, I'm not going to let it happen. I'm not going to go into decline, and I can get better. I know it. I can always get better if I do the right kind of work. I was convinced. And that's really where the wheel started turning. And, I wanted to find solutions for myself first. And then over the years, I got the idea that what worked for me, was bound to work for others too, if they were willing to put in the time. And, that's what these games are going to be about too. I'm not asking for a ton of time. The more you put in, obviously, the more you get out. But it's that following the program and having that external source of motivation. That's what I can provide. So, well, I had a lot of fun today. I love talking with you guys. So thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up live. And again, you've got my email, contact@natesviolin.com. Give me your questions there too, if you didn't want to ask them here in this session, and I'll be happy to answer them. But really looking forward, whether you're able to join this summer, I'm going to be seeing you. I'm going to be seeing you around, I know. And if you can be part of the games this summer, it's going to be lots of fun. And already can't wait to welcome so many of you into the games. So I will see you very soon. And one last time here, just so that it's at the bottom, I will put that link. Again, more information for you. That's the place to sign up. Thanks so much. I'll see you really soon. Bye.